development in the wind industry sector and its role in implementation of the Vayumitra Skill Development Program is all set to achieve greater heights of our country's capacity building activity. With the rising concerns on climate change, countries are under pressure to turn to renewable energy sources and reduce CO2 emissions. Amongst renewable energy sources, wind energy has proved to be a highly successful energy option, and 906 gigawatts has been installed worldwide by 2022. India's renewable energy target is 500 gigawatts by 2030 as a part of a stronger climate action plan. The National Institute of Wind Energy, under the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India has pioneered in promoting wind energy in the country. NIWE is the premier institute of its kind in Southeast Asia and in other developing countries and has shouldered the responsibility to speed up wind energy development not only in the country but also in the neighboring region. Earth's commercially viable wind power potential is estimated to be huge, and only very few countries are tapping wind power at a large scale. Even though a good potential of wind is available in many countries, the wind power project is hindering because of the lack of skilled human resources at various stages of deployment. To address the human resource development issue, NIWE is already extending its training support to the various stakeholders on all areas of wind energy technology. To highlight this, NIWE has so far conducted 56 national and 45 international training courses since 2004 and trained more than 3,000 professionals from 102 countries. Under the skill development initiatives of the MNRE, NIWE has been mandated as the nodal agency for implementation of Vayumitra Skill Development Program, VSDP. VSDP aims to develop the skills of local youth in the vicinity of predominant wind farm locations and provide opportunities for employment in the growing wind power projects on the 3 job levels: qualification packs, operation and maintenance electrical and instrumentation technician, operation and maintenance mechanical technician, site surveyor, prepared by the Skill Council for Green Jobs, which is approved by the National Skill Development Agency of the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India. The program envisages training of 5,734 participants, out of which 5,010 participants through Training of Participants program, 1,830 participants in O&M Mechanical Technician, 1,830 trainees in O&M Electrical Technician, and 1,350 trainees in Site Surveyor. The TOP program will be conducted at the identified training partners located close to wind farms of 9 windy states, namely Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Karnataka, Kerala, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, and Telangana. To train the participants through the identified institutions, NIWE will train 690 trainers, 345 participants from the institutes and 345 participants from the wind industry through 12 days training of trainers programs. Both the TOP and TOT program will be assessed by qualified assessors from the Sector Skill Council, and NIWE will conduct orientation programs to 34 assessors through Orientation to Assessors program of 7 days. NIWE, the building block for skill development in the wind industry sector and its role in implementation of the Vayumitra Skill Development Program, is all set to achieve greater heights of our country's capacity building activity. With a rising concern.
Very good morning to all. Now we are going to start the session. capacity building for energy transition. Respected dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let me introduce myself first. I am Dr. Vasanta Thakur, Scientist, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. I am delighted to welcome all of you to this significant panel discussion on capacity building for energy transition. Let me start with a famous Indian scripture quote, that is, Kshanasaha kanasashaiv vidyamartaha cha sadhayet kshanatyago kuto vidya kanatyage kuto dhanam. Knowledge should be gained through minute-by-minute efforts. Money should be earned utilizing each and every resource. If we waste time, how can we get knowledge? If we waste resources, how can we accumulate the wealth? Here I am talking about the human resource. The Indian government's international commitments for fighting against climate change and declared target capacity addition of 500 gigawatt of non-fossil power capacity by 2030, where most of the capacity is through renewable energy, has significantly changed contours of power sector is through, including demand for quality manpower. It is expected to add construction and manufacturing jobs in sight of the boom in solar photovoltaic, wind, green hydrogen, battery storage, and other renewable energy technologies. There is also a need for the trained professionals within educational institutions to teach renewable energy courses within governments to design and implement effective and efficient policies, and within financial institutions to accurately access renewable energy project assessments. Every job level needs a varied skill set, and highly skilled employees are beneficial to the organization as well as for sector. In an era where energy transformation is not just an option, but a necessity, building the right capacity, be in terms of skills, resources or infrastructure, is the key to ensuring that this transition is both effective and sustainable. India, with its growing energy needs, is at the forefront of this transition, and today we have gathered some of the most esteemed minds from across the spectrum of government, industry, and international organizations to share their insights on how we can accelerate and optimize this journey. Let me introduce our esteemed panel. Mr. Atul Kumar Tiwari, IAS, Secretary, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India. Shri Atul Kumar Tiwari belongs to 1990 batch of Indian Administrative Service, born on Karnataka cadre. He has handled different policies in the state of Karnataka, particularly in industries and commerce, urban infrastructure, development, and education, with many accomplishments in his name. In the Government of India, he has served with distinction in Ministries of Urban Development, Overseas, Indian Affairs, Rural Development, Textiles, and in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Presently, he is serving in Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship as Secretary. Friends, I am happy to announce, under his visionary leadership, India shines at World Skills Leo 2024 in France with 16 medals, including one in renewable energy. More we are going to hear in his keynote address. A big round of applause for Tiwari sir. Welcome you on that, sir. All right, so please. Now I invite next panelist, Dr. Arun Kumar Tripathi, Advisor, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. He is looking after the HRD activities, human resource developmental activities and skill development in Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. He was leading the national programs for solar rooftop and solar cities at MNRE. Dr. Tripathi is also the editor of Akshay Urja, the bi-monthly newsletter published by MNRE to promote awareness about initiatives by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and provide information about developments in the renewable energy sector. He is going to give the MNRE perspective in the skilling in renewable energy sector. Welcome on dais, sir. I'm happy to introduce our next panelist. That is Mr. Rodney Rivera. He is the cluster coordinator for the SPSD cluster at GIZ India and head of the Indo-German Vocational Education and Training Program. He leads key initiatives, including the Indo-German Initiative for Technical Education with Siemens India and Ascent, a public-private partnership with Tech Mahindra. With a career spanning over 3 decades, Dr. Avery has held roles as a teacher, advisor, and a consultant. His international experience includes managing projects as well as consultancy roles. He is currently driving innovative skill development and capacity building initiatives across India. We welcome you, sir. Next panelist is from Indian industry, Dr. Omkar Jani. Dr. Omkar Jani is currently the president and head of Central Technical Services for solar manufacturing at Reliance Industries Limited. Prior to joining RAL, Dr. Jani was the managing director of Canada Energy Systems Private Limited, a technology-driven solar power systems and engineering company. He previously served as a project scientist at Gujarat Energy Research and Management Institute, that is GERMI, where he initiated key renewable energy programs and contributed significantly to skill development in the solar sector. With over 15 years of experience, Dr. Jani has trained more than 1,500 solar professionals, launched the National Certification Program for rooftop solar installers, and set up solar ITIs in Gujarat. Join me in welcoming him, Dr. Jani. I'm happy to invite our next panelist. He is Mr. David Poddock, representing the Blended Finance Company, Germany. He leads efforts in the skilling and vocational education sector. He works with various stakeholders, training providers, NBFCs, impact investors, and government bodies to design financial instruments that help particularly from youth from lower income backgrounds, acquire in-demand skills like green skills and secure aspirational jobs with strong career prospects. His key projects include designing a social impact incentive to boost rural women entrepreneurs' incomes, setting up performance management for a large education-focused development impact bond, that is DIB, and crafting financial structures to improve governance outcomes. Let me welcome Mr. David, who will offer global perspective on innovating financing mechanisms in skilling. Mr. David, please come on us. Now, I will invite our moderator and panelist, Mr. Sunil Jain, Chairman, Skill Council of Green Jobs. Mr. Sunil Jain is a seasoned leader with over 30 years of experience in renewable energy, automotive, infrastructure, manufacturing, and clean tech industries. With expertise in scaling startups and building successful businesses, he has played a pivotal role in the growth of 2 major independent power producers as the CEO and Executive Director of Hero Future Energies. He led the company to become one of India's top renewable energy firms, managing nearly 2 gigawatt of wind and solar assets. He previously helped establish Green Infra Limited as a key player in the renewable energy sector. A strong advocate for sustainability, Mr. Sunil has contributed to innovative energy policies. He currently serves as chairman of the Skill Council of Green Jobs, the Energy Council at Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, and the Indian Renewable Energy Alliance, and is at the forefront of preparing our workforce for green energy jobs, ensuring the talent pipeline is ready for the new energy economy. Welcome to DAS, Mr. Sunil Jain. So now I will hand over the floor to Mr. Sunil Jain. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. I welcome Secretary Mr. Tiwari, who's been kind enough to travel all the way from Delhi for this session, and all my fellow panelists on the dais. And most importantly, I've been attending a lot of sessions in last 3 days, but I see such young minds attending this session, and this session actually belongs to you. Very pleased. And this shows that the future of India is bright. The government of India is extremely focused on creating jobs. And let me tell you this, the personal presence of Mr. Tiwari, Secretary MSDE, is a testament to the commitment of the government of India towards skilling and capacity in the renewable energy sector. The dynamic world around us has transformed at a fast speed. After the pandemic, with growing dominance of technology, communication, globalization, the global job markets have seen major changes in the nature and scope of work, jobs, employments. All in all, this means that 21st century skills for students are a passport to a successful career pathway in the upcoming years. The highly skill-driven world demands individuals who possess essential competencies and have a result-oriented approach. Speaking from the ramparts of Red Fort on the occasion of the 78th Independence Day, Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji mentioned that India's commitment towards net zero future in the coming years with deployment of 500 gigawatt renewable energy by 2030. He further mentioned that as the importance of green jobs grows in the near future, youngsters, we must seize the opportunity and provide employment to our youngsters. We must focus on skilling and expanding the green job sector. Government of India is walking the talk when they announced a massive $20 billion investment into the workforce capacity building over next 5 years across different sectors in the industry. Government of India has announced path-breaking schemes like PM Kusum and PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana to benefit farmers and 10 million households. PLI for the manufacturing sector. These are game changers as it kills 3 birds with 1 stone. Provide clean and free energy to poor household, create a self-reliant India, and generate high volume of jobs due to labor-intensive nature. Almost 25 numbers per megawatt across the value chain. So this is an important information for all the youngsters sitting here that there are a lot of skill jobs available in this sector provided you are skilled in the right fashion. We have observed in the industry many times employment crisis stems from a poor employability rate. This means that organizations do not find the prospective candidates skilled enough to give them jobs and roles. As per World Bank report, the 21st century labor market needs individuals with comprehensive skill sets, includes social, economic, emotional, that is teamwork, self-control, leadership, cognitive, problem solving, reasoning, creativity, critical thinking, digital, to understand and create information securely, technical, the master of technology. We have seen that transition to renewable energy requires significant investments in infrastructure, cutting-edge research, vocational education, and the development of technical skills to keep pace with the technological advancements. Both the government and private sector recognize the importance of engaging and equipping new talent to meet these demands. Studies indicate that globally the renewable energy sector alone will require over 50 million trained professionals by 2030, which actually tells us that your prospects are not alone in India, also you can have global prospects. The government of India has also started a national hydrogen mission which is going to produce 5 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030, generating almost 600,000 jobs in this new sector by 2030. India, with a capacity addition of approximately 300 gigawatt to happen between 24 and 2030, we are projecting an additional requirement of 2.2 million workforce between 2024 and 30 in the RE sector alone. This includes 500,000 jobs in utility scale solar projects and off-grid projects, 0.8 million under PM Kusum, and 0.65 million under rooftop projects. Now, these numbers are huge, and therefore the onus of skilling these young minds rests heavily on our shoulders, and how we do justice to that will depend on how this panel guides all of us to show that this is achievable, and this should be done on a top priority basis. Skill development is seen as a shared responsibility of key stakeholders, that is government, the entire spectrum of corporate sector, community-based organizations. Those outstanding, highly qualified and dedicated individuals who've been working in the skilling entrepreneurship space for many years, industry and trade organizations and other stakeholders. The policy links skill development to improved employability and productivity and paving the way for inclusive growth in the country. The skill strategy must be complemented by specific efforts to promote entrepreneurship in order to create ample opportunities for the skilled workforce. This session, we propose to dive into several key critical issues to building the robust and future-ready workforce for the energy transition, explore opportunities identified for strengthening the renewable energy skilling ecosystem, both in India and internationally. An important aspect to be discussed is the financing models for skilling, which probably always are given a miss, but are need of the hour, which with a focus on international and Indian investments. We must discuss harmonization of global skilling standards, the inclusion of underrepresented groups, and enabling global mobility for the Indian workforce. Finally, discuss the requirement of synergy between skilling institutes and renewable energy industry. As we all know, digital technology is playing an important role in all facets of industry, and would therefore urge Government of India to start interaction within the various skills sector councils and the industry to develop synergy between technical development and availability of skilled force. This panel is trying, and I would end with two lines, that skilled India means a strong India. Empower your future through renewable, energized India. Thank you. May I request Mr. Tiwari to please deliver his keynote address. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Vasantaji, for giving the fair background of the event today, and Mr. Sunil Jain for saying everything that I wanted to say, but being the chairman of the Green Jobs Sector Skill Council, which is a constituent part of the Ministry of Skill Development, NSDC, and the skilling ecosystem, I would like to thank him for laying out the ground map of this sector. Under the visionary leadership of Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji, that India has set up a very ambitious target for the COP. It is also going full throttle on the increasing in the renewable energy by the targets which were just mentioned by Mr. Jain. And I'm sure the fellow panelists, Dr. Tripathi, Dr. Rodney Riviere, Mr. David Podok, and Mr. Omkar Jani will also talk about the different facets of the conundrum which we are facing, which is about the skill development. First of all, I'm very happy that the session is called as capacity development because it requires not only some amount of skilling here and there, but the overall capacity development for the renewable energy sector. Without going into many of the points which have been mentioned by Mr. Jain and our moderator, I would say that the learning curve which is required in the renewable energy, it requires a higher level of technical and skilled manpower. And the way the India is transforming itself, we require to first lay our hands on the skilling, which is a huge number, as well as reskilling and upskilling, and most importantly, work in all different areas, because the renewable energy, like the skilling, is inherent, is an integral part of every sector of economy. So what is that we have done about that? First thing is that under the leadership of Mr. Bhalla, Honorable Minister of Renewable Energy, and our Minister, we are working very closely with the MNRE in trying to develop the guidelines or working with them, whether it is the PM Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, or whether it's the green hydrogen, as well as the other renewable energy sources of power. There is also a very important part in terms of driving the entrepreneurship. So we have to look at the skill level, not only at the enterprise level or the industry level, but also at the household level, entrepreneur level, MSME level, etc. And it requires a whole new approach in the terms of education as well as skilling. The way that this both can be brought together has been amply clarified and explained in the National Education Policy 2020, by which the higher education institutions as well as the school level education, they will have a part of the vocational education part from class 9, 10, 11, 12, as well in the AICT and engineering institutions. As for us, whether it is the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, whether it is our ITIs, everywhere we are working with the corporate world and the sector skill councils in trying to design new courses, new curriculum, as well as revise the existing courses. For example, if the ITIs have some training about the motor vehicle, then we need to bring the RE element into that. Whether it is there something or the pump operator or anything, it requires a useful addition of the RE elements within the existing courses. I don't want to bore the young stuff here, but this is the direction which we have taken. And we have done a lot of work in this regard with the NCVT, our regulator, sector skill councils, and the NSDC, as well as the training institutions. Even for the PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, as you talk about, we are working very closely with the MNRE and expect the help from the corporates and the vendors so that the people who have been trained in the ITIs, they will be also given on-the-job training on the institutions. In the green hydrogen, which has a 6 lakh job opportunities, we are working very, very closely, and a lot of work has happened. Here we have also adopted a new innovation, which is that we have to bring, as Mr. Jain was saying, that the different sector skill councils have to come together, and we have to see that the renewable energy component is inbuilt into all that. So for example, of the green hydrogen, we are working closely with the Sector Skill Council of the Green Jobs, which Mr. Jain heads, also with the power, with the mines, with the petrochemicals, and such motors, vehicle, automobile, so that everywhere this spirit of the renewable energy is impacted. As was mentioned, we are also very lucky that with the help of the industry, in the World Skill Championship, where there were 70 developed countries were there, India could get a bronze medal in the renewable energy, that too with the support of the industry. So I'm, again, very proud and thankful that we got the industry's role in that. Even in the G20, the skill development has laid emphasis on future of work and the rapid transition in the market for the jobs. We have introduced 120 plus future of work jobs, including green jobs, in all sectors, and we are training under the PMKY for that. The most important part in this is there has to be a contribution of the private sector towards skilling, upskilling the workforce in green skills, whether it is reskilling, upskilling, or skilling per se. And the private sector, and we are working with the MNRE so that we can partner with them, so that we can accelerate the skill development process. In the end, I would like to say that we are working together as a government as a whole, as envisioned by Honorable Prime Minister. The skilling is also becoming part of every aspect of the government departments. And as was mentioned in the budget itself, the skilling and employment has been given a lot of emphasis. It is in that we need to work together. And we are, with the foundation of this National New Education Policy, the foundation of the Skill in the Digital Hub, the way we are working and collaborating with the different industries, the way we are working together with the different sector skill councils, the way we are trying to design new methods of financing, as I would like just to mention, whether it is the skill impact bond or skill vouchers or social stock exchanges, these methods will also be very, very conducive for the private sector to engage with the government and their training institutions for upskilling, reskilling, and skilling our youth so that we can have a dedicated human development strategy for India's massive transition towards the green energy and our ambition of the net zero capacity in the near future. And I'm sure that with the sustained effort of the government, with the academia and the private sector, we'll be able to achieve this. It also requires a new versatility, it requires an innovation, it requires a flexibility, and our skilling ecosystem, which is very well placed now, we are bringing all these elements into that so that we are prepared to take the challenges and scale it up to a different level altogether so that India is able to transition into a net zero country by 2050. And I thank all the panelists for being here and also the audience for listening to me patiently. The future is with India, and it is here for us to work together to seize this opportunity to not only for our country, but for the whole planet. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Secretary Mr. Tiwari.
We are now going to launch one report which has been done in collaboration between Green Council for Skill Jobs and GIZ. I would request Secretary Mr. Tiwari to please launch this report. This report is about investing in skills and talent to secure India's green energy transition. May I request now Dr. A.K. Tripathi from Ministry of New and Renewable Energy to give the perspective from the ministry side.
Thank you very much, Jain Saab. Respected Shri Atul Kumar Tiwari ji, Secretary MSDE, Mr. Roddy Rivere, Mr. David Product, Mr. Omkar Jani. The renewable energy sector in this country has emerged as one of the forefront sector in the country. And believe me, the figure which I am going to give you right now, we collected in writing from various stakeholders of the country on the occasion of this RE Invest. And I'm happy to mention that whatever figure we were apprehending so far, 20 lakh, 30 lakhs or something like that, what figure we are today for the first time, we received in writing from all the sectors. In developing sector itself, like development and installation only in the renewable energy sector, they have quoted that more than 60 lakh jobs can be created. All the developers of solar energy, wind energy, bioenergy, this is just installation purpose. For the installation purpose, 60 lakh jobs can be created. Then manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector of all solar and module manufacturing, solar cell manufacturing, and so on, can create 21.5 lakh jobs in the country. The figures given by the industry people. The third one, towards the wind side, we can create 30,000 jobs. And in hydrogen, we have estimated 6 lakh jobs. So these are the figures which are the real figures got from the horse's mouth. And what we feel is that there is a absolute need of the qualified and skilled manpower in this sector. Recently in the PM Surya Ghar Yojana itself, we have experienced that the quality of the installers, there are more than 8,000 people registered for installation of the solar system in the country, rooftop, but the trained and skilled manpower with them is lacking to a certain extent. They got registered, but somehow they are managing the installations. But you know, it is a small power plant. Power plant may be big or small. You need a complete technical skilled manpower for this purpose. What we envisage is that the qualified and structural people are available in our country, but for a particular sector, they need to be re-skilled. We have the vocational courses. We have a lot of informal technicians in the country. These people need to be tapped and brought towards this sector and given the formal training for that. Then today, the e-learning system is also available in the country. Those who are having access to the e-learning solutions, these kind of courses need to be given into the e-learning mode. Certificate courses, small courses, on-job trainings, this is one of the very important thing. Anybody who undergoes the training needs certain field training, and this is also one of the very, I would say, a challenge in our country, that after having skilled for certificate course, vocational course, a one-year course, a person has to undergo for at least few days or few weeks or few months towards the completely field job trainings. Now, I would like to give little perspectives of the Government of India, what we are doing in this sector. There is a separate division, a human resource division in the country, in our ministry. And under this, we have designed few courses customizing to our requirements and needs. The Surya Mitra training program, skill development training program, has been undergoing for the last 9 years. And under the PMKY, the solar installers course is also catering to this, and including all these, more than 100,000 solar technicians have been trained, given training for 3 months training, including the on-job trainings, and they are available in the country. Then we have launched the Jal Urja Mitra program for hydropower sector, where we have a training, and we have a very little numbers, 400, close to 400 done in this. Then we have Vayu Mitra towards the wind energy installations. And this also, we started just 3-4 years back, and we could do around 200 people trained into this. The wind sector needs a very high-skilled technical trained manpower. Then we have the Varun Mitra for solar water pumps. You imagine the millions of solar water pumps are being installed. They need to be installed under the PM Kusum Yojana, and we need the skilled manpower for that, for installation, operation, maintenance, and so on. Then under Muft, PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, which is very talked about nowadays, more than 3 lakh people are required to be trained, and we have the about 8 type of the different trainings we have developed, and with the Skill Council for Green Job, Ministry of Skill Development, these trainings are being given. DGT is playing a vital role in this. NCVT is approving the short-term courses, because long-term courses are already available for 300 hours, 600 hours, but we need to train these people in a very shortest period of time. Then we also have, for the larger technical manpower, like skilled, we have the MTech level fellowships. We have the internship system in the ministry, in which a 15,000 rupees per month is being paid up to 6 months. So all the graduates, all the postgraduates, if they want to undergo this training, so we provide, we have a national portal in which they can apply, and they can be placed in ministry or our 3 technical institutions, or including the different private sector where the trainings, where they can undergo for the on-job trainings. So this was a little setup, but what we have experienced the challenges so far. One is the infrastructural development at the training site, at the training venues. We have different ITIs, we have different polytechnics, we have different private training centers. These training centers needs to be equipped with the all equipments, with the tools for the complete introduction and how to use these tools, and also for dismantling and rearranging the system in which they are going to be given training. These are the 3 key systems. Until a center doesn't have this, they have this center, this equipment, they should not go for the training, because just theoretical classroom training doesn't work at all. But classroom training is a basic foundation of that. So there should be a mix of classroom training 40%, and 60% has to be the hands-on training. What I perceive is that, like IT sector, India has exported huge number of IT professionals all over the world. In the same sector, I believe that India can also export a huge number of skilled, trained technicians to the world. Like Germany, US and other countries also, the trained technicians in the renewable sector are required. So this is not only to give job opportunities in India, but also their job opportunities all over the world. The employment, total employment opportunities which have been created by all these sectors in our country is 80 lakhs. These are the figures given by these people. So beyond these figures also, I request all the training centers, be it private, be it government training centers, the quality of the training has to be of the international standards. We should not compromise. We can compromise in the number of trainings, number of trainees, but we cannot compromise on the quality of trainings. So the quality of trainings for all these skill development training centers, we need to focus on that, and equipped with the all this infrastructure that can be improved. Another part is the trained master trainers. This is the key for the trainings. Master training courses which we design for 1 day, 2 day, 3 day are not at all enough. The master trainers have to be given at least minimum, I feel, is a 2 weeks training, or 1 week. 1 week is a minimum and 2 weeks training is an ideal. Until they are trained, they cannot train the people. If they are trained in a less training, skilled manner, they will also deliver the same thing. Of course, I know that these master trainers are already engaged in their different assignments, but if somebody wants to undertake their career as a master trainer only, then there is ample scope for all the technical people to undertake this, but a redesigning of the master trainers needs to be given. So that is one of the very important thing which I wanted to highlight. And with this, I close my talk, and we'll discuss more as the panel goes on. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Rodney, really appreciate your coming all the way for this session, and your thoughts would be very valuable. So you have been heading the Indo-German Vocational Education and Training Program. And also understand you've done a lot of programs with the Skill Council for Green Jobs in the skilling this thing. So what are your experiences during Germany's energy transition in terms of availability of skilled workforce, especially in the rooftop segment? Because Germany started rooftop much earlier than the world, and their deployment is well documented. So one, that what are your experiences and how are they different from India?
First off, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Secretary and fellow panelists. It's my privilege and honor to be up here with you all. Germany's experience is, of course, a totally different situation than India's. Germany is facing a labor shortage. One of the constraints, in fact, in the transition that we have had moving towards more and more PV and more renewables has been a shortage of skilled labor. People have to wait months for technicians to come. My daughter, for example, had a heat pump installed in her house, bring the electricity bills down. She had to wait 9 months for them to come and install it. If you want a plumber, you have to make an appointment months in advance. So that's the situation that Germany is facing. But one of the things that it has done is PV installation is just, in terms of the training and skilling, it's an add-on module for electricians. They do not have a specific qualification for a long-term training path for PV technicians. So they'll have an electrician, they'll take a course to upskill and then they'll have the qualification as a PV technician on top of their electrician qualifications. But I do have to say, the electrician qualification standards in Germany are quite high. It's a 3-year training program, including about half of the time which we would consider on-the-job training. So they have a deep theoretical and technical knowledge and ability, which then is easy to add on to. So it's a different fundamental training structure. But nonetheless, I think it's something that India can learn from. We have, in fact, worked with the Green Jobs Skill Council. We've put together successful training programs, including sending technicians, trainers to Germany for certification as master trainers. So they were actually doing on-site master training as trainers for, I think, a 2-week period. I think we did 3 batches. And that was quite an experience for those because they learned the hands-on training techniques that Germany uses.
Okay. So are there any gaps in the current skilling ecosystem in India that you need to be addressed to better support the RE sector?
I know that MSDE, MNRE, and other ministries have invested heavily in skilling and in the workforce. But it's still not enough because we have so many youth. I mean, anytime that you're talking about India, we think about numbers, and the numbers are incredible, and the numbers are mind-blowing when you think that Germany has a population of 100 million. The one thing that I don't hear a lot of discussion about is productivity, worker productivity. That is what investors look at. When they're considering where they're going to invest, they're going to invest in a place that has the best rate of return, in other words, worker productivity. So I guess the main thing I'd like to say here is that investing in human resource development and increasing productivity is a prerequisite for investing in overall in the energy sector. So I would not say that that's an afterthought. I would say that it's a prerequisite. Why would we invest in a place which has lower productivity? I say this because of personal experience. I worked in Bangladesh in the textile project previously, and I was very surprised when I met some Bangladeshi entrepreneurs, factory owners, who were building factories in Ethiopia. I thought, why Ethiopia? Well, in fact, they were looking at productivity, and productivity was one of their metrics to decide to invest elsewhere. And I think that same thing, if we want to increase and attract investment in India, we need to increase worker productivity, and we need to invest in that as a prerequisite. So I think one of the gaps is that kind of thinking, in fact. A bigger holistic thinking. We're thinking a lot of times in qualifications packets, we're thinking a lot of times in training hours and all of these things. All of them are important, but we need to have the resources beyond the government's resources to be able to make that happen. And then I'll bring in, as I always do, the German masala. What makes a training in Germany special? What makes it different? And that is the emphasis on practical training with industry. That industry link is probably the biggest gap in the Indian skill system, because the industry has the knowledge, the industry has the skills that they can share with their trainees, with their workers, but they also have resources. So we shouldn't just be depending on the government. We can't always be saying the government will provide a skilled workforce. That won't happen. Doesn't happen anywhere. The government supports, the government can drive, the government can incentivize, but it cannot do it alone.
Thank you. Those are great innovative ways you've told us. And productivity, I think so many of us have not been looking at that angle. And that is one thing which probably we should start looking at during the training itself, as to how a throughput can be measured.
I had to start thinking like David.
Okay. Dr. Omka Jani, you have brought a lot of experience even on the training side and capacity development in your past avatar also, and now you're working with one of the largest company in India for greening India. So where does the Indian skill ecosystem need to push boundaries if we want to be leaders in technology, innovation, and manufacturing?
Morning, sir. Thank you for having me. Yes, over the past 15 years, I was very closely working with Arpit and team, mainly on the skilling for installers, right, and designers for PV systems. Now what I'm doing is I'm a part of a slightly different sector, which is solar manufacturing, right? So our factories in Jamnagar are coming up. Interestingly, just to give you a number, right, and as Dr. Tripathi said, when we looked at the numbers that we needed to hire, we were shocked. So a 10 gigawatt factory for just cells and modules, so needed 20,000 people, right? 20,000 people, all sorts, right from your operators and technicians to your process engineers, slightly more, educated, and of course your utility people, your planners, 20,000 people. And again, this is an automated factory, right? It's a highly automated factory. We were hoping to see a number like 2,000 or 3,000. And here we came out with a 20,000 figure. And then when all the factories in Reliance in Jamnagar, which is our hydrogen, which is our batteries, I think we will end up probably easy hiring about 50,000 people, right? And so the numbers that you gave, Dr. Tripathi, is the manufacturing sector is going to start employing a few lakhs of people, right? That's beyond doubt. Now, when we started hiring, we immediately felt a shortage. Again, that's the same shortage we felt about 10 to 15 years ago when we were looking for installers. Fortunately, there are ITIs available. There are electrical, mechanical, instrumentation engineers available. But as Rodney said, they needed to be highly upskilled. And so that's what we've done. We have set up these pilot training lines, which are like mini factories themselves, where we will have to constantly upskill, because we do know that the moment the guys get upskilled, they will find jobs elsewhere. So we practically, knowingly or unknowingly, have become a training institute in ourselves, right? So that upskilling is one major one that we're seeing. Again, the semiconductor industry is also coming right next to us, right? In India, it's developing. So what we feel is that we need specific skills to be developed. Sure.
2 minutes, I'll ask one question.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Jani and Rodney and Tripathi ji and Mr. Jan. I'll have to leave, so I will just say a few words because the VP, Vice President, is entering. The fact is that the way the things are being described, and I'd like to just add 2-3 points. One is that if you require skilling of this level, it cannot be done by the skilling alone. So one is that it has to be part of our education system itself. And that is why I mentioned the national education policy. And that is where we find, working with the Ministry of Education and higher education institutions per se, that a lot of things are happening on that account. In fact, the report which has been made here is very clear that it lays down the different levels of skilling required and the kind of the competencies which will be required. And as you are yourself admitting that you had worked with the skilling and you require that you are having an in-house skilling process itself. So that is what Mr. Jain has been saying, and that is what Dr. Rodney Riviere has said, that it is time for us to come to a understanding that the government can provide the incentives, and maybe the MNRE, Dr. Tripathi, can also think of what kind of incentives can be given, because all these RE things are depending on a lot of government subsidies and other help. So if something is made as a skilling as a part of that, and we can work with you on designing that model, which along with our skill loans which we have, and we have the skill impact bonds and stocks, so social stock exchange, etc. That is where the both things can combine together to incentivize the industries to come forward and do it. On our part, the skilling ecosystem, as we have seen, we are trying to develop, and the scale what it is, we need to develop far more. And if you get the energy and the dynamism of the private sector coming into that and interacting with the government, that is where we will be able to work. And just to give one example, that the PM Surya Ghar Mitra Yojana, in which we have given training to lakhs of our plumbers, electricians, and the Surya Mitras per se, we are trying to reskill them in a small course so that they are able to do the operation and maintenance and erection of the solar panel, etc. And we are facing such a dissonance from the industries and the vendors coming forward and taking it. So at some point of the time, the industry and the related value chain, they also have to realize that the level and the scale at which they require skilled people in the RE, that cannot be done alone by them, as by the government. It is in the best interest of everybody to come across and join hands to develop this skill eco-force. And this is something which will not happen overnight. It requires certain levers to be pulled. And I'm sure the financing part and other parts will also do that. And we have been interacting with Mr. Tripathi, Mr. Bhalla, and Dr. Vasanta Kumari, that we like to work on that so that the industries come forward as a matter of their operational plan. And lastly, that is why I say that the capacity building of energy transition, capacity building takes away, it's a more wider concept than the skilling itself. And I'm sure that it requires capacity building not only in the skilled workforce, but also in the HR managers. The HR managers have to think, not the shop, they have to listen to the shop floor people. And they have to see and devise the way you devise, get funds and technology, the way you also have to work overtime to get the skilled workforce also. And I assure you from our part, I assure on behalf of Mr. Jain and the Sector Skill Councils, if you come one step forward, we'll come 2 steps forward and do it. And that's the only way, and that's the only hope for which we have to do it. And we are ready to do it. You come and ask us, work with us, and we'll do it. Okay? Thank you.
Sir, with this, I just want to coin a word, which is corporate social responsibility, everybody knows. We must have corporate skilling as a responsibility. So that is going to give a impetus, as you rightly said, that the industry has to come forward.
So, thank you, Mr. Tiwari, for giving us collaborate, create, and then consume the workforce.
Yes. Dr. Rodney just whispered in my ears that it is to be beyond CSI. It is your business plan.
Yes.
It's part of your operational plan. This is how you do your financial projection.
Absolutely.
And how you are going to run and the high-tech industries without the skilled workforce. And it cannot happen overnight.
Absolutely.
So that is how you plan your businesses, your plants. That is how you have to plan and capacity building and skilled workforce.
And I like
that is where it starts, and that is where we are heading to.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
NEP is actually addressing some of those issues right from the school level, you know. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Well, these things do happen. So let's continue with our discussion. So, Omkar, while you did mention about those ambitious numbers which you have received and you are planning to train them, and we heard Secretary saying that industry needs to collaborate with. So in that sense only, then how can skilling institutes and our industry work together to ensure that the workforce is adequately trained and industry ready? And this would also take care of what Rodney was saying about productivity. So if industry collaborates, then they can give their requirements as to what they really need, so that the skilled. So what are your views on that?
So absolutely, we fully agree. In fact, the requirement needs to come from the industry, right? We cannot expect universities to just make people employable, ready. And this is something that we've been doing. We've been talking to a few universities, including a few IITs, on whether they can design some courses for us. We're also in a dialogue with the Skill Council for Green Jobs on whether some upskilling programs can also be done. So even as we are getting started in this sector, we are also new. So we are also realizing now where the gaps lie. And so upskilling is definitely one, but the kind of volumes that we need, it has to be very structured. It cannot be organic anymore. So fully agree with you. It has to be structured, and it has to come from ITIs and universities. And again, all sectors, right? Because of manufacturing and the way we are moving, we need people who understand AI, ML very well, because there's so much of data which is going to come. So we need people like that also. So we will certainly be going ahead. And of course, with Skill Council, I'm also associated.
Yes.
So we'll definitely take it up, sir.
So what all we have been talking right now requires a lot of capital and money, which always remains a challenge. So I'll come over to David. David, you have been in the financing sector for quite some time, and you were also part of the Skill Council and GIZ workstream on capacity building. I need your views on what are the most effective financing models currently available for skilling, and what funding mechanism would be most suitable for attracting new talent in the green energy sector.
No, absolutely. I think we've been talking about, what is the kind of demand that is going to be there in this space. And like Tripathi sir was saying in his speech, Omkar Jani was saying, there is a lot of demand that is going to be created in terms of the jobs, green jobs, etc. And on the supply side, Skill Council Green Jobs, of course, has been working on this. Ministry has been working on this. And there are already hundreds of training partners who are associated or affiliated with the Sector Skill Council. Industries are now coming into the picture. And we see this sort of going forward, like more and more institutions being set up, the capacity for the institutions increasing as well. However, there are two important questions which Sunil, you were raising. One is, are there going to be enough workers to meet all of this demand for investors to come in and put in the money? And the second is, will these workers have the right skills for them to be employable and go into the industry, right? And on the first part, financing, of course, is quite critical. If you want to train a lot of students, it requires a lot of financing. Financing for new institutions to be set up, financing for existing institutions to start new courses, start new centers of excellence, and so on. Financing for students to sort of apply for these courses and finance the course fees. The second part, though, is slightly trickier, right? Because just bringing in more financing by itself is not necessarily going to create quality workforce. It might create a lot of people with certificates. And that requires thinking about financing more intelligently and how we deploy that financing. And that is where we think blended finance really comes in. Right? It provides mechanisms to bring together different stakeholders, so government, CSR funders, private donors, as well as commercial investors, and create the right incentives and create the right risk-return structures, one for all the stakeholders to come in, but also the right incentives for everybody to focus on student outcomes and student employability. So with that, I'll give you 3 examples of some such structures that we can use to make sure that we're able to bring in financing effectively. So if you look at what are the kinds of skilling levels almost that we need, at the basic is where we have the entry-level support role skilling. So this is things like PV installer, electrician, welder, etc. These tend to be shorter certification courses. And the kind of profile of students who come in and the jobs that you get in later and the salary that you get in, this is where you need a lot of donor support, whether it's the government, whether it's the CSR funders. So here, there is scope to think differently about how this funding goes out, right? Like right now, predominantly it goes out based on number of students trained, and as a result, you essentially end up with a lot of people who have certificates, but not necessarily students who can be placed. So here, an impact bond type structure is something that will be super helpful. And the way this works is instead of the government or the donors directly giving money to a training provider, they bring in a private investor and they say that, look, I will pay you the cost of the training plus actually a return if you show me certain outcomes, certain number of jobs, certain retention, etc. What the private investor then does is works with training providers. And because there is this return associated with putting people in jobs, they actually work with the training providers to build their capacity to say that, okay, these are the systems and processes that you need to do this, and bring in the industry connects, etc. That sort of automatically happens because you're creating the right incentive.
Probably they are designing the curriculum. The investors would also design a industry-ready curriculum.
They will definitely facilitate it, right? So they'll bring the right, so they say, look, at the end of the day, we need jobs. So how do we do that? Let's look at, is your curriculum right? So can we talk to industry partners and figure out whether the curriculum is right? So that is for the basic sort of support role skilling. Now, if you look at one level higher, you have more sector-specific core skills. So these are things like designing of PV systems, green hydrogen plant designer, etc. Here is where I think private sector needs to come a lot more. These are skills that are more advanced, need more investments, tend to be more expensive, but also lead to higher salaries, right? And therefore, students in general are willing to finance or rather pay the course fee. However, because the course fees are higher, given the type of courses, etc., they typically apply for loans. Right now, the problem is banks, the funding to skill loans is very minimal. NBFCs, of course, are addressing this target segment. But even with NBFCs, almost half the students who apply get rejected. The reason being, NBFCs sort of focus only on the parental financial condition. When you do that, there are 2 things that happen. One, of course, is that the rejection rates are too high, and certain segment of students always tend to get excluded. And the second, there is no incentive for a training partner to really do anything in terms of placements, right? Because regardless of whether the training partner is good or bad, the approval rates are the same. So I will get the same sort of type of enrollments. And what we need to do here is really think about how we underwrite the loans. How are we selecting the students who can go for these courses? And a way to do this is to really look at the future income potential of students instead of their parents' financial situation. So if you look at the training providers and look at their track record and whether they are able to place students and give loans based on that, then automatically there's now an incentive for the training providers to say, okay, if I'm able to show this placement, then I have my approval rates being high, I can get in more students, my revenue goes up, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore, even within the loan construct, now the training providers by themselves will actually go out and find industry connects. They will go out and partner with industry and say, look, we have students, can we put them on on-job training with you? And we're actually seeing this happen in other sectors where such constructs.
Yeah, that's also there, like with the universities and colleges, they do go out and reach out and have.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So something what you're saying is similar. Thing
Exactly. I think right now it's just some of the top institutions doing this.
Yeah.
But we feel that once you create that incentives, you'll have a lot more of these institutions doing things like this. So these are just a couple of examples of structures that can work in this space and can create the right incentives for everybody to focus on student outcomes.
Okay. Thank you. That was really interesting concept. Dr. Tripathi, how can we better anticipate future skills needs in the RE sector to ensure a proactive approach to training rather than a reactive approach, which probably we are following today? And what are the future skills anticipated in the RE sector?
Sir, your first question is that there is a need right now to integrate the training institutions with the industry. That is what is absolutely needed. That is not at all happening right now. Both are working in different silos. People are being trained under different trainings, under different government training programs or private training programs. They come out and they have to look, this is the world. And when they go to the industry, they find that practically they are lagging. So this is one of the very key sector in this key factor which is required to be integrated. Even the different trainings which are being designed right now from the PM Sorighar or the Skill Development Ministry is doing or so, we are lagging in that. Let me admit it, we are lagging in that. Industries are either not coming forward or there is some factor that needs to be brought. The second thing is that, as I told you, these are the figures which I got, the reality is much more than that. So the opportunities are there, employment opportunities are there, but somehow they're not getting married. These two people are not getting married. So there is an absolute need for this thing, which I feel.
Thank you. Well, I'll come to Robert. We have to move quickly because I would give audience a few time because there's a lot of young minds sitting here. So what are the most promising opportunities for skilling and education in the RE sector, both in India and internationally? And how can India harmonize its skilling standards with global norms to ensure inclusion and facilitate global mobility?
I think the second one is the easiest one, but I mean, there really aren't international standards per se formalized. So we have to look at what we pretty much kind of have to compare almost on a country-by-country basis. But if you do that, you'll start seeing there are definitely common elements that are going to be in these training qualifications globally across the countries. So I think this sort of analysis is ongoing. There's constant comparisons. So we're going to look and see how do we compare with the others? What do we need to do? There are some fundamentals which cause complications, let's put it this way. For example, the focus on skilling by the creation of MSDE has put a lot of impetus in that area of skilling and practical training, practical education. But it created then this distinction between education and skilling. Now the National Education Policy, as the Secretary pointed out, starts to try to get rid of that division between learning academically and learning to do things practically. And so I think that's a good step in that direction. But we still have to, because in Germany, for example, here's an irony, that a German qualification is not recognized in India, even though it's higher. Or in fact, because it's higher, it's not recognized, because it would have to be recognized by MOE rather than MSDE. So it's a little bit of an irony. So these are bureaucratic things that oftentimes have to be dealt with. So a lot of times, the hurdles are bureaucratic and not practical. As we've seen through the World Skills Competition just this month, we know how to skill. We can do it in India. We know how to do it. That's the mobilization of resources, that's really the big gap. And we know how to do it at a worldwide level. I mean, at a skill level which is competitive around the world. So we know how to do it.
Thank you. Quickly, last words, Omka, skilling is not all about jobs only, but skilling also creates entrepreneurs. So how does our skilling play in fostering entrepreneurship within the RE sector? And how can this be enhanced?
I think it goes hand in hand. If you're good at your job, you can become a good entrepreneur, right? And this is what we've seen. As time goes, of course, the solar installation sector has a lower entry barrier, but as the sector advances, the financial requirement for an entrepreneur or the entry barrier for a business is slowly going to increase. And that's where you really need to be sure of what kind of an entrepreneurship do you want to get into. And for that, you need to be really good at your job. So that's what we even tell people who come work with us, that get some experience, you find a gap where you can create a value, and then you can become a successful entrepreneur. Right?
Yeah, okay, great. Last from Davis. How can we attract more international Indian investment into skilling initiatives for renewable energy sector? And really, can we create a viable business model?
The short answer is yes to both. I think, so just to give a quick overview, right? So one is just, if you look at the models that I've just mentioned, that already creates some avenues, right? So if you look at the impact bond, you now have a private investor who needs to do working capital financing for the training partners and gets paid back by the government and by the donors. If you look at the loan model, where now you're shifting the underwriting and focusing on future income potential, now the segment of students that you cover almost doubles overnight. So you need financing for that. So you have domestic investors like NBFCs, banks doing the financing, but they need their own capital, right? Which is where international investors can come in and give both senior debt, especially commercial-minded investors who don't want to take that much risk and give senior debt, and the impact investors internationally can come in and give junior debt, right? So this is just in terms of the instruments. But even outside of that, if you look at the overall ecosystem, there's a lot of scope for international investors to come in. There are a lot of new institutions that are going to come up, and they're already coming up, who are looking to disrupt the space and create better student outcomes, bring in paid internships, bring in on-job training. You need venture capital for those new institutions. The NBFCs themselves, as they keep growing and addressing this demand, need growth equity. Again, a scope for international investors to come in, both of which are already proven in India. Right? We have a lot of venture capital coming, we have a lot of growth equity coming in. And finally, of course, even for existing institutions, there's debt financing requirement, et cetera. So I think one is creating structures where international investors can come and say, okay, if I want to look at this target segment, this is the structure I invest in, this target I invest in this structure. So that's a little bit on people like us to sort of create along with the government, along with industry, along with the training partners. The second is the wider ecosystem opportunities that exist, which are already proven. And then I think once we have those models, and we already do to some extent, and we can keep building on those, it's then having forums like these to socialize with the investors and say, look, these are the opportunities, let's make this happen. But I think if we're able to do that, and we're almost already there, to be fair, I think we can make it happen. I don't see why not.
Thank you, thank you. Just one word from my side, and that is, Mr. Tiwari is not there, but probably we can convey the message to him. My view is that we should start propagating what Government of India or the industry is trying to do in the trainings, internship, or in the NEP policy, and more so in vernacular languages across the country. Everybody doesn't understand Hindi and English, so it is important to do it in the local language. And more so in the hinterland and the rural areas, from where the people are going to come in, and where the projects are actually going to be installed. So once we are able to do and bring, it's like not taking horse to the water, but bringing water to the horse, because the people are not, in the hinterland are not mobile. They'll not come to the cities for job. They want the job near their houses. So that is something which probably we can do to enhance the skilling experience for people. Okay, thank you everybody, and we are ready to take some questions if anybody has some questions. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sunil Sahu. I am the CEO of InnoDust Tech Solution Private Limited. We are a skilling company working pan-India. So I was listening to Mr. Rodney, what he said that the OJT is how it is a critically important part of the skilling program. Even as a partner, who is conducting the skilling program in the ground level, we also understand the same thing. But the question here is that when we develop the qualification pack or model curriculum, few sector skill councils, they are not mentioning this OJT part is mandatory. So while we are conducting these programs with some donors, maybe some state governments, so they are omitting this OJT part because it's not written mandatory. So it is a request if NCVT can take up this matter seriously, or MSD, that this OJT part has to be a mandatory component, then I think it would solve the, yeah. Because, we are also, Professor Arun sir is here, HRD, so IIT Roorkee, we are conducting their program, small hydro. 50% is OJT and that's mandatory, the training program. So if the same thing also can take up with NCVT, that would be nice. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for that observation. Any other questions?
Hi, sir. I'm Saket from KPMG. I mean, this is a little bit of deja vu. I mean, someone talked about the software industry and, the boom in the 2000s. This is very, I mean, a report after report talked about unemployability of proper graduate engineers, software engineers. And this has been a debate in the IT industry for a very long time. And then big IT players started their own large institutions, invested a lot of money, capital, everything into these. So this is sort of looking at this similar. So, and why, I mean, the question really is, what is the problem with the industry's engagement with academia? Because that is where the problem seems to be the biggest. I mean, probably the industry is looking at creating their own institutions and do not really engage so much with academia. I don't know what the issue is. So could you address that? Because this is the biggest issue. We are looking at skilling, but in terms of, let's say, in universities and, courses which are very industry aligned, because that seems to be a huge gap there. And so if there is anything that industry, what is the problem in engagement between academia and industry? Today here as well, I mean, we are not seeing a lot of academia's involvement. There is government, there is industry, but where's the academia?
Omkar, would you like to take that question?
Give it an attempt. I'm not an IT expert, but I think the pace of expectation probably is a mismatch that we can think of, where an industry wants something yesterday and the university takes time. But I think that is a problem that can be solved through really good coordination, a lot of dialogues back and forth between the academia and the industry. And that's what we are also realizing. And that's what we did, right? Today we are under my HR department is under tremendous pressure for recruiting people. They don't have the bandwidth to go and talk to a university, right? That's the bottom line. But we do realize that we need to address this somehow. So everybody's going out of their way. It usually practically takes a lower priority for an industry, but there needs to be somebody within the system who really pushes it, because it's a long-term return, which is very important, right? And it's a much higher return. So that's probably the only thing I can think of right now.
So I'll just add to what he said. So I've made one suggestion that every school from 10th onwards should have one chapter on renewable energy, because this is one of the most upcoming sectors. The basic understanding of the renewable sector should be provided to students from 10th onwards. That would incite some interest into them. And once that goes into the university also, where you have a course, it is not necessary that you have a technical course only. You can have some basic course also on renewable. That would start interest in the universities, and then universities start collaborating with industry, because they want their students to learn. So that is how probably we can start off, because a lot of software industries did that with the universities and technical colleges later on. So we can follow that same model rather than reinventing a wheel, but it should start from class 10th itself. So, Professor Arun Kumar, the last question, and the time is up. It's showing.
See, the point which Saket has mentioned about this industry, industry needs what, Jani has very clearly mentioned. And as a sector, I can understand, because I do not only the IIT, which is higher institute learning, but at the same time, at the lower level with the talking skilling. The problem is that the training institute or the education institutes are not able getting the support of the industry. In what way? Let me tell you what the way. If you want the people to get them visited to the plants or to these things, they do not allow any. They hardly allow such kind of facilitations. If you want to ask their persons to come here, the lecture and participate in the training so that they get a much more first-hand details, that is also missing. Skill, if with the qualification package is fine, but at the same time, the practicality, which is the dominating area, which all the times people talking about it, and everybody wants that there should be enough skilling. That's where the industry need to come, and that's what even Jani has just mentioned, that this is where the pushing has to be done. Money is one part. Money is certainly one part, and this is where I like to say hearing especially this David and Jani and Robert. This is where I think we need to look at our own program of our MNRE and Skill Council has to look at that thing also. So that's a nice thing, and I think industry should be pushed on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Saket, then that's one of the answers to your question, that industry need to be pushed also, that they should have, if not more, a day's practical or 2 days practical, because obviously industry cannot be disrupted in their manufacturing processes. But there was a solution which requires, of course, a lot of capital, is that whichever institutes we are creating for training, if we can have small pilot working models, it need not be the actual machinery, but the pilot models of that, so that at least the students understand what exactly that machinery looks like, how does it work. If that can be created in the training institute, which I have seen in US happening, that could also partially help.
If I can quickly comment on that. I think one of the reasons that this is not happening right now is because the incentives for the industry and what industry is looking for is very different from what training partners are looking for, right? Now, if I'm an industry and you're coming and telling me, look, my students want to look at your plant, I'll be like, okay, but I will need to take out my time. What's in it for me, right? You need to answer that question. And what we've seen is there are some training providers who have answered that question. And what they say is, look, we will train our students to be ready for the job. They will, on day one, be able to contribute in the role. And we will be able to provide how many of our students whenever you want. So they have a relationship where the industry month after month calls them up, says, I need 20 students for this plant, 50 students here. And they're able to share those students, send those students. And therefore the industry is like, look, now you're solving a huge problem for me. I don't have to do the training for them. I'm not having to go out and source them. All I need to do is give you a call. They're actually paying for each of the student that the training partner is sending because they're that good quality. When you're able to do that, now the industry has a relationship with you, and they're now they're more than happy to welcome students to visit the plants, because they say that, okay, these are the same students who will now come back and work for me. I might as well get them as much practical knowledge as possible, right? I think if you're able to create that alignment of incentives where industry is listening to the partners are listening to industry, and both of them are giving for each other and benefiting each other, then that can happen. Unfortunately, it's in a very high minority right now, but there are a lot of examples where this is happening, and if we are able to create incentives where more and more partners are able to do this, then I think that will be one way to sort of go about
So
this.
collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. That's the mantra for the thing. Thank you so much. We have run out of time. Any questions we will take offline. Thank you everybody for your patient hearing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience and expertise. Just we want to present memento as token of appreciation for the panel. Thank you so much. Now we are closing the session. Thank you. So I invite all you to join valedictory sanction.
our mission is solving challenges of sustainable future. Individual designs, cells, operates smart enterprise, smart energy storage systems, hydrogen electrolyzers, discharge solutions. We have global innovation centers in Germany, Denmark, USA, Japan, Singapore, and China. We have invested around 500 crores in India, established 3 gigawatts annual manufacturing capacity in Gujarat, Maharashtra for national hub, and 2.5 gigawatts annual manufacturing capacity in Lake with 9 more in future, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Gujarat. We further geared up to increase our manufacturing capacity from 2.5 gigawatts to 4 gigawatts, depending on market demand.
We are indeed strengthening our Indian connections, and of course,